Hi and welcome to another video from Alpha Challenges. In this video we'll be looking at a new archetype for Hearthstone, which is Trample Hunter. Trample Hunter is a deck that combos with just comboing from the hand. Most of the curve occurs while you use your spells to buff a minion while you're in your hand, and then you use the trampling ability to go hit into the opponent's minions and then also damage the opponent's hero. In this gameplay, you'll see the ability of and the power of Trample Hunter. It is used in addition to the Discover mechanic to help protect your hero while you get the combo pieces assembled into your hand. Most of the time you want to clear out your minions, then your buff will certainly land on the 5-drop, which will then ultimately be able to use Trample into your opponent's minions using Rush. This results in having a pseudo charge ability, which then ultimately combos your opponent down from their hand. Try this deck out before it gets nerfed. The most important card for this deck is Warsong Grunt. It has a rush, and after it attacks and kills a minion, it can attack again. This, in combination with the trample card and also all the buffs that are used, allows you to combo your opponent down from what could be full health down to nothing. You can use it to attack over and over, and the game plan is that you want to attack the minions with the least amount of attack and then into the more and more attack, because ultimately, as long as you kill the minion, you're still dealing that damage to the opponent's face. Usually, and what we'll be seeing shortly, is that you'll see that you can use it, and generally you'll have 10 plus attack and health, which allows you to kill any minion that's from that on the field, and then you can hit into the opponent's face several times. This card here, Always a Bigger Jormungar, is a 2-mana spell that gives a minion 2 attack, and dealt by attacks hits the enemy hero. This is very useful in combination with Warsong Grunt, because ultimately your game plan is to increase your and buff your Warsong Grunt to as high as possible, and then attack into each of the opponent's minions to increase the damage, and then go into the opponent's face with the extra damage that's occurred. Exarch Naielle is a 3-mana 3/4 that replaces your hero power to become a tracking hero power, which is a 1-mana hero power that then searches a card from your deck. You can then choose and grab your combo pieces that you need, or your buffs that you need, to increase the Warsong Grunt into the opponent's hero, or you can use it to the Discover to make your alien encounters cost be reduced down by 1. It can be used aggressively or defensively as a result. So it's the card that you're basically searching for most of the time to make sure that you have what you need to in the following turns. Cup of Muscle is a 1-mana spell that can be used 3 times that buffs a minion in your hand by 2/1. The game plan is to increase the damage and the health of your Warsong Grunt to be able to, in combination with the Trample card, take out your opponent in 1 turn. This can be used simply because of the Perils of Paradise Tourist card that allows the warrior cards to be used in the Hunter class from Perils in Paradise. Reserve Spot is a 3-mana spell that gives a random minion in your hand 4/4. If it's the only minion in your hand, which is the game plan of this deck, it also reduces the cost by 2. So this allows you to reduce down your Warsong Grunt's cost and be able to play it as early as turn 5 to be able to use the combo, or you can use it earlier if you had 2 reserve spots and the Warsong Grunt and the combo in your hand as well. But ultimately this speeds up your combo turn a lot quicker, and it also means that it buffs your minion too, so it's essential in this deck. What I'm doing here in this gameplay is I'm waiting and trying to protect myself until I draw into my larger minion. I'm going to use my new Hunter card, which then reduces down by the amount of cards you've discovered throughout the game. This ultimately then helps protect me and protect my health while I'm waiting to draw into my 5-drop. You'll see with the Hunter, they're just trying to clear the board. You'll see with the Death Knight, they're just trying to clear the board, which ultimately isn't that strong, considering I'm just waiting till I draw into my combo pieces. I give the opponent another turn because I don't have anything in my hand, so I'm looking for things like tracking or birdwatching to be able to discover my 5-drop, Or I'm also, with this sort of hand, I'm just looking for, yeah, that 5-drop so I can hit down into the opponent. I end up drawing into Birdwatching here, so I pick it up and I choose the Warsong Grunt. That's the card that combos with this deck because you can use its ability to have Rush, and then it can attack into the opponent's minions, and it can attack again and again until it dies, basically, or until your opponent runs out of minions. So what I end up doing here is I'm just waiting for their opponent to play down some more cards to be able to hit into. I'm also waiting for being able to buff my Warsong Grunt. So there's a lot of cards in this deck that do combo with that, as I've previously mentioned, that do help with buffing into Warsong Grunt. Right here I use the punch card in combination with the Trusty Companion, the stick. This then gets me a 1 mana 3/3. It's quite powerful doing this because it gives you rush, but it also thins out your deck, and also trying to get the combo pieces for it. You'll see in the next turn that I do go for the kill into the 6/2 with my Char. Char increases the amount of damage that increases the amount of stats for the minion, a random minion in your hand, depending on how much excess damage you did. So this was 7 damage. It increased my my Warsong Grunt by 5/5, which is quite strong. I then just give the opponent another turn. I'm waiting for them to play down some minions so then I can take out their field with it. They play the Warlock, the Airlock Breach, which then allows me to be able to combo them down. So what I do here is I play down my punch card, and then I end up using the Warsong Grunt with the Trample, which then is able to OTK them. Because what ends up happening is you deal excess damage to the opponent's face, so I reduce down these minions to as low as possible for their amount of health, and then I combo down the 35 health that this opponent has. This game's against Mage, and my mulligan, I assume that I'm playing against Elemental Mage, since Big Spell Mage received a massive nerf. I don't think there's much on ladder for Big Spell Mage anymore. What I am mulliganing here for is I'm mulliganing for tracking. I'm also mulliganing for the 3-drop, which turns your hero power into tracking. What I end up doing here is I grab the reserve spot, since I do only have 1 minion in my hand, and I also have the Forge the Traps in my hand too. So what I end up doing here is I'm just going to end up playing the Explosive Trap down. It obviously signals to the opponent that it's just an Explosive Trap because there's only the 2 minions on the board for them. But what I end up doing next turn is I play the Overplanned Worker, because I want to get the minions out of my hand as quick as possible. This then allows me to choose some cards from the top of my deck. I end up choosing Cup of Muscle because it allows me to buff my Warsong Grunt while I'm waiting for the opponent to play down some more minions. This following turn, what I end up doing, or what I'm planning on doing, is I'm going to be using the reserve spot or the traps. I can't particularly remember which one I ended up doing. I think it was the traps, then I could get closer to my alien encounters, which will help protect my health total. What I'm thinking of here is I want to try and draw some more cards. I think that they're going to play down a minion, so it won't affect that, and it'll allow me to draw a spell and weapon from my deck, further reducing the cost of the amount of cards in my deck. They do end up drawing more cards here, so it seems like they've got quite a strong board just looking at it. So I draw into my Trample card now, which then signals the end for the opponent. So what I end up doing, I play the Alien Encounters. I then play Reserve Spot, which boosts my Warsong Grunt by 4/4, and also reduces its cost down by 3 since it's the only minion in my hand. I've reduced my cost down by 2, to end up being a 3 cost, which is because it's the only minion in my hand. The following turn, what I have planned out is quite obvious. I end up using the Cup of Muscle, I then use the Warsong Grunt, I then use the Trample, and then that ends up comboing down the opponent from their full health because they have so many low cost and low health minions on their field. What I'm doing right now is I'm just thinking to make sure that I've got enough. I do end up having enough, obviously. I use Cup of Muscle, I then play down the Rush Grunt, I play down Alien Encounters, and then this ends up comboing the opponent down for the full health that they have. My mulligan once again here is I'm just trying to get the tracking or the 3 mana card. Getting the Fish of the Day isn't preferred because I'm assuming this is going to be the Warlock or Pain Warlock, both of which aren't that strong for that for the Catch of the Day. But I end up passing the turn over to them because I choose to use the tracking to help get some more get some more cards in my hand. I was correct in assuming that this is going to be Pain Warlock. Pain Warlock, I was a bit worried would end up being able to combo me down quite early, but this deck does also run quite a few taunts to protect your health, while the opponent ends up reducing down their health by a lot. Right here, I end up using the Forge, so each time a card is discovered, it reduces down the alien encounters, and this also combos with the alien encounters. I do decide here to trade Fish of the Day into the 2/2 because I was playing around the 2 mana 3 that adds 3/3 to the opponent's card. That would then allow the opponent to have a much stronger board state. But if I didn't do that, I trade into the 3/3 here, even though I do know I have Explosive Trap. And then the following turn I end up using my Alien Encounters. Or I'm planning on using my Alien Encounters. So I use once again I use this card to reduce down the cost of my Alien Encounters. I then just leave my attack because I've already used both of my 1-drops that are in my deck, which are the Catch of the Days. The opponent's down to 7 health, which I do know that is going to be using the Infernal this turn. It's not a big problem for me because that requires them to play down a lot of cards, and then they end up using their Molten Charm, which allows me to get the Rat Trap activated. With the Rat activated, it does mean that they... I grabbed the Warsong Grunt here. It does mean that they aren't able to do a lot of damage to me. I was just a bit unsure about what to grab out of those two. Since I've already got the Trample in my hand, I don't really need to worry too much about it. Next turn is going to be Reserve Spot into Reserve Spot. Since I don't have any more 1-drops into it, I don't have to worry. Sorry, I'm going to use the Monkeys, because the 2 Monkeys provides more of a wall for the opponent to help continue my combo turn. So I end up waiting for the opponent. They'll use their cards that they need to. I play down my Reserve Spot. I then use the 2 Monkeys to protect my health total to make sure that I've got enough for the following turn. And since the opponent has 2 of those trams on the field, I'm able to... I'll be able to combo them down the following turn with the Reserve Spot, Warsong, and then the Trample. Explosive Trap as well is also very strong in terms of this. This is a little bit of BM, so I probably shouldn't have done it for them since I knew that I already had lethal for them, but ultimately it ends up just doing the same thing by comboing them down. Going into this match against Druid, I'm assuming that it's Dungar Druid, since that's the only card that's been around basically for the entire time that this patch has been live for Druid. Taunt Druid obviously is a deck as well, but Dungar Druid is significantly more common in Legend. What I end up doing here is I'll use tracking. I'll then I think I'll use tracking, then I'll use birdwatching, then I use the 3-drop. This sets me up for having a relatively decently sized board. The opponent is going to use the Druid strategy, which is quite passive for quite a long time. I end up deciding to play the Enoch down here just because I do want to get that tracking ability online earlier, because ultimately it's a lot more powerful than just using a birdwatching. I am only able to use one birdwatching this game because I don't really want to draw into more than one minion to have in my hand, because then I can't use the reserve spot as effectively and my cup of muscle isn't as strong either. The opponent uses some more cards to help draw, so they've done a bit of ramping, they've done a bit of extra drawing. This turn they'll be going into 8 mana, so what I end up doing here is a pretty passive play as well. I'll keep the tracking, I then use reserve spot, I buff up my minion a little bit more, and then I pass the turn over to the opponent. The following turn I'll be able to use my alien encounters to build up a board. Since they're just using this Earth Rock, I'm able to combo it down quite easily, since it ends up getting to smaller and smaller pieces, which is very, very easy for my Warsong Grunt to take out. I decided to get the 1-drop just here because I want to try and reduce down the health of that of the elemental. In hindsight, it probably would have been better just grabbing an explosive trap or something, but it does mean that I reduce down the opponent's health. I still am also looking for the trample, so I'm just waiting until I do draw into that. I'll be using tracking again to once again try and search for the trample. It's the priority for me to grab. And I just buff up my minion a little bit more, even though just looking at it, I don't think I needed to really worry about it. What I do here is I trade, reducing it down to 1, which then buffs my minion up by 6 more of stats. And then it's the following turn, no matter basically what they do, I'm able to combo down their board. If they did have Zilliax, that could be a problem with the board that I have, but ultimately they didn't end up having the Zilliax that's here, so I play down my Warsong Grunt, I give it trample, and then I end up just comboing down the opponent that's there. Going into Hunter, I'm assuming that it's the Starship Hunter, because Trample Hunter, although is quite strong, Starship Hunter has been a lot more popular from what I've seen. At mulliganing, I keep the Warsong Grunt. It may be a mistake doing that, because ultimately the idea is that you want to look for tracking and birdwatching and the 3-drop as your mulligan cards. But since I already had in my hand in the reserve spot, I thought that it would be a good strategy to keep it, because ultimately it allows me to reduce down the cost of it anyway. I end up getting the 3-drop, which I'm going to then more than likely coin out. So they're using quite an aggressive style deck as well, but since I've got the tracking hero power, it does make this deck a lot stronger, because I'm able to also increase the speed in which I get alien encounters. I end up using the tracking hero power first. I'm searching for... it's a hard choice here, but because I do want to try and defend my board, and I just trade into the 5/5 because I do want to try and reduce down the amount of damage the opponent's dealing to me, because I know that they're the more aggressive deck, and since they're the more aggressive deck, it means that I just need to try and combo them down while also protecting myself as best as possible. The explosive trap does mean that they end up clearing their board, which allows me to have a turn to buff up my Warsong Grunt. Since I drew into the 3-drop just there, I do have to take a turn off buffing my buffing my Warsong Grunt because I can't do anything with that. I then decide to just get a few more cards into my... I play down the Overplanner to make sure that I am keeping my minion only being a single minion in my hand to help boost up its stats. With all their stuff that they're playing down, they do have quite an aggressive board that's there. This allows me to just help set up a little bit longer, so I use the tracking. I don't find anything too important that's there, so I play down my alien encounters. Oh no, I do a reserve spot, and then I play down my alien encounters. This just protects me for an extra turn. I do have lethal, I think, this following turn, since their minions do not have very much attack. It allows me to then just keep hitting into the opponent's bodies that are there. So what I'm planning out here is I'm just going to be using the 3-drop, and then I'm using the trample in addition to it. That means that I can hit 4 times. They only have 28 health, so since they do have a reduced down field, I think about what I'm doing here. They do play around the best that they can because they're reducing down the amount of minions on their field that don't have the amount of minions on their field that have lower amounts of health, which then results in me having to go an extra turn before playing down my Warsong Grunt. But since I drew on the reserve spot, I forgot what I was doing with that. I then get up to enough health to be able to combo them down. Because ultimately you just want to keep hitting into the things that has the least amount of damage and the least amount of health. Preferably the least amount of damage, then you're able to do as many as possible. So it clears the board and then it hits into their opponent's face. Playing against Rogue, I'm assuming that it's going to be a Starship Rogue because that's the most common Rogue deck on the ladder. Cycle Rogue is quite strong, and we're going to have a video coming up sometime soon about about Cycle Rogue and the way that you can use it. Incendious is quite strong as well in that deck because it allows you to draw through your deck really quickly, and then you're able to combo your opponent down, dealing a lot of damage. So if you just have a single Incendious board that you end on, you're able to do just 45 damage just coming from your deck, and then obviously with the buffs coming from Oracle, it does boost it up too. The opponent uses a stick up, so that is a significant signal that it's going to be the Fizzle Rogue or Starship Rogue. The Deceiver's always a card that's a bit of a concern to be playing against because it allows your opponent to get cards that just not only have cheated the mana cost by quite a lot, by 3, it means you got to play around basically anything that your opponent could be possibly drawing into. I use the tracking here, I get the Cup of Muscle because I do want to be able to buff up my minion as quickly as possible. I then use the Rod to Catch the Date and go into the 3/3, so then they can't reduce down any more costs for their minions. I was not expecting them to have a 6/7 out on this turn, so I just played as defensively as I can. I use the reserve spot, I believe, and then I use Alien Encounters. Just planning out my play, but that ends up being the way that I end up going for it. Oh no, I use Cup of Muscle. So I'm just trying to buff it up as quickly as possible, I guess. This ultimately allows my opponent to think that they're in a pretty safe position. They play down their lower cost minions and stats that are there. This results in then me being able to just combo them straight down because I've boosted up my Warsong Grunt up enough to be able to combo them down. for last games against Paladin, and Libram Paladin is quite commonly the deck that ends up being played. What I end up doing once again is I'm trying to mulligan for my Discover cards and also the Legendary, the 3 mana Legendary. The idea behind this is that it then allows me to get my Alien Encounters, search for the cards that I need, and then ultimately combo down the opponent as quick as possible. Something that I do that is difficult for this deck is the ability to have Divine Shield. Because Divine Shield blocks the minion, but blocks the Warsong Grunt from KOing, from killing the opponent's minion, it does mean that you need to play around that. And what ends up happening is when they use the 6 mana card that's reduced down that gets all the Divine Shields with 3/3s, it does make it quite difficult. So what I'm thinking about in this is I'm thinking of how I'm going to get some minions down onto the board to deal with those Divine Shields, but also thinking of an Explosive Trap possibly play, or things like that. So I end up getting my 3-drop, playing my 3-drop down here after I hit into it, and then I get my 3-drop, I get Catch of the Day come out of the deck from my Trusty Fishing Rod, and then the following turn I'll be using Tracking and Reserve Spot to help protect my board. Since they've got the weapon out, the Libram weapon out, they're able to use it to get extra cards that are there for them as well. Its Battle Cry and Death Rattle does reduce down the cost of Libram weapons by 1, so ultimately they've reduced down by 2 so far. What I'm planning here is I do the Tracking, and then I'm going to be using the Reserve Spot, because it is a possibility that I could be drawing into one of the minions that I don't really want to, and I want to be using the Reserve Spot as quickly as possible to make sure that it's less likely to have an issue. The opponent ends up they have the weapon in their hands, so they could play that down, or they could be playing down their Libram spell that they ended up drawing into. They end up dropping the Interstellar Researcher, they get Libram the Clarity, and this I believe ends up drawing into the 10-drop that is reduced down by the amount of cards in your opponent's hand, or in your hand. This Ranger Gully was not a preferred card that I end up wanting to draw, so I do decide to play it down as quickly as possible. It does give a little buff for your minion, but ultimately the only reason why it's being played is then you can use the Warrior hand buff cards to increase your Warsong Grunt. The opponent plays Living Horizon down, and then I believe that they're going to play down one of their other Libram cards that they end up drawing into. With the extra Divine Shield that they've just placed onto their hero, it means that they don't take any damage, obviously, from my Ranger Gully. They end up taking out my Ranger Gully as well by using a minion that has Divine Shield, so this is a board state that is quite scary for me. I wasn't particularly impressed when I saw it, it was really hard to think of how I'd deal with it. I wanted to get the 2-drop out of my hand as quick as possible as well, so I end up just playing down thinking about how I can get as many taunts in the way of this opponent to try and get some Divine Shield procs that I do prefer. I play down the Alien Encounters because I feel like it's less likely the opponent will be able to take them out as easily without reducing down their board. The opponent, I'm thinking they're in a significantly advantageous position, and I'm just hoping in this situation they use the 6/7 to trade into the 2/5, which then would allow me to combo down my opponent the following turn. What ends up happening though is that they end up leaving the 4/6 on the board, which then allows me to do the same thing, which is beneficial for me because they get a little bit confident in terms of what their strategy is to do this. They do try and do as much damage as they can to me, but this ends up being the undoing because it allows me to keep the 4/6 on the field, which, although I'm relatively low on health, I'm able to 1 health. I think they just miss lethal, and I did that to be honest. I am able to combo them down from my hand because they've lost the buff on that Divine Shield on the right, and then they have 4 minions that are lower health on there. So I use my Cup of Muscle, I then use another Cup of Muscle. I play down my Warsong Grunt, I then use the Trample, hit into the 6-7, and then I trade into all the other lower cost things. So I trade into the 6-7, trade into the 1-2. You want to trade into as low attack as possible minions, as long as you can kill them, and then I trade into the 5. I could have done obviously any of the other directions as well, but that ended up clearing the game as quick as possible for it. Thank you for watching this presentation of Trample Hunter. I hope that you've enjoyed the presentation. I hope that this has been insightful in terms of how you can play the deck. Please like, subscribe, and for more.